welcome back to my channel, or for those of you who are watching for the first time, welcome to my channel. On this channel, I create videos about the college and graduate school application processes so that you guys know everything you need to know about getting into the schools of your dreams. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about financial aid for college. The cost of college is one of the first things that students talk to me about. They come to me and say, I love these schools, and then I went on the tuition pages and I couldn't believe how much these schools cost each year. And that's a really valid concern. Colleges across the US are really, really expensive, and it can be tough for a lot of families to figure out how best to pay for these schools. But in today's video, I'm going to go over some ways to help reduce or even eliminate your college costs. And so hopefully you guys won't be as terrified when you go on to the tuition pages of the colleges you're looking at and see sometimes the astronomical sums of money that are listed there for tuition. To start this video though, I first want to touch on how tuition costs vary amongst different colleges in the US. There are three basic categories of colleges in the US. There are in-state public schools, there are out-of-state public schools, and there are private schools. I would say historically, the cheapest of those three options are in-state public schools. In an in-state public school, if you are a resident of that state, there's some sort of government subsidy that helps to reduce your tuition costs if you go there. The second cheapest option tends to be out-of-state public schools. Unfortunately, you don't get that resident in-state subsidy any longer, but public schools just tend to have a lower tuition overall. And then lastly, private schools do tend to have the highest tuition amounts. However, this is not always the case. I think private schools have really realized how much they are sometimes price gouging students, and so they've made a lot of efforts to either reduce their tuition or offer students a lot of funding to help make it possible for them to attend there. But now let's say, you look at your in-state public school tuition or your out-of-state public school tuition or even your private school tuition, and it's way more than you're willing to pay or way more than you're able to pay. So I'm going to transition into talking about some things you can do to help lower those costs of college so that they're not as much of a barrier for you and your family. My first tip is fill out your financial aid forms as soon as possible. Colleges use one or both of the FAFSA and CSS profile forms. These are online forms that essentially assess your financial information as well as the financial information of your parents and or guardians. Essentially, you'll put in all their information and then it will spew out some number or value, which is supposed to be an indicator of your financial need. There are lots of different things that happen once you have this number. Sometimes you'll be eligible for federal student loans, which may have this delayed interest period where you don't have to pay interest for the first few years. Sometimes you'll be eligible for Pell Grants, which are a few $1,000s a year that just help to offset some of the tuition costs of college. Sometimes you'll be eligible for work-study programs where essentially you'll work a given number of hours at the college you attend, and that college will pay you some determined rate. And then in some cases, you'll be eligible for institutional loans or need-based financial aid, and this is the institution itself giving you money to help make the cost of college lower. But let's say all those things happen and the cost of college is still too high for you, because that happens all the time. Very, very often students do qualify for loans, institutional or federal, students qualify for work study, and students even qualify for Pell Grants, and they're still unable to pay for the cost of college. Luckily, there are other systems in place that might help make this more doable for you. The second option are external scholarships. There are countless external scholarships available to students. Companies offer scholarships, nonprofit organizations offer scholarships, local interest groups offer scholarships. There are so many scholarships you can apply for. However, they're not necessarily as good as they sound. Oftentimes, a lot of students will be vying for one or two scholarships, and those scholarships might not give them more than $1,000 or $2,000. And don't get me wrong, $1,000 or $2,000 is amazing, but probably not enough to offset the cost of college. However, if you do choose to apply to external scholarships, be smart about doing it. Don't just write a scholarship essay for Coca-Cola and expect that you're going to get it. Rather, try to sift through different scholarship opportunities out there. Find ones that maybe not a lot of people apply for, but that you do, so you maximize your chances of actually getting it. Or maybe apply to scholarships through a parent's job where, again, there aren't as many people vying for those scholarships. Also, be mindful of how much you actually get from those scholarships. A $3,000 scholarship is great, but if they only give it to you for the first year of college, what are you going to do the other 3 years of college when that extra $3,000 is no longer there? And so apply to external scholarships with caution, but if done properly, they can be very profitable for students. Another tip for reducing the cost of college is live at home. And when I talk to teenagers and I tell them to live at home, they probably want to slap me across the face. And I remember when I was a teenager, the last place I wanted to be was at home. However, if you can cut out room and board costs of college, a lot of times the prices will go down quite significantly. And so if you live by a decent state school or private school, consider how much cheaper it might be if you end up living at home. And talk it over with your parents. Perhaps they're going to be willing to give you much more space than they gave you in high school because they realize you're growing up. And so it might be a worthwhile option to consider, even if at first glance it might not sound the best. My next tip is consider community college. Now, this really varies state by state, and so it's important that you check into the rules of your own state. But in certain states, if you go to community college for 2 years, you'll be eligible to go to any state university within that state for the following 2 years in order to get your bachelor's degree. Essentially what that means is you can go to a community college, you can pay reduced community college tuition, and you can even live at home for 2 of the 4 years of your college bachelor's degree. And so you save a ton of money because you're only paying for a 4-year university for the last 2 years, but you're reaping the benefit of getting a degree from that reputable school. My next tip is consider top-tier schools. Sometimes when I tell students this, they laugh in my face. They're like, of course I'm not going to go to Harvard or Yale or Princeton. I can't even imagine how outrageous tuition costs at such schools are. However, it's a little bit counterintuitive. If you are a competitive enough applicant to get into some top schools like USC or the Ivies or Johns Hopkins, a lot of these schools offer free tuition for students whose parents make under a certain threshold. And to be quite honest, the threshold is pretty high. I'm not talking about the poverty line here. I'm talking somewhere between about $60,000 and $80,000. And if your parents make a little more than that, you'll still have dramatically reduced tuition rates at top schools. And I completely recognize this is not an option for a lot of students because those schools are very, very difficult to get into. However, if you are a star student, don't shy away from top schools just because you don't think they're affordable. Because the fact of the matter is they might be your most affordable option out of all the schools you end up applying to. My next tip is consider career paths that offer tuition reimbursement. There are some careers out there. I would say the most common ones are medical field careers like nurses, as well as teaching careers, where if you're willing to work in an underserved area in the United States, the jobs you end up working at will repay some of the tuition you were charged during college. Now, this one's a little tricky because it's not like when you get into college, you can guarantee what jobs you'll end up getting. And honestly, a lot of times people go into college and change their minds about what career they want to do. However, if you have your heart set on being a nurse and you know you want to practice in a rural area, remember that a lot of these nursing jobs, a lot of these teaching jobs will offer some degree of tuition reimbursement once you're actually working in the field. My next tip is have someone else pay for your education. And I don't mean your parents or your grandparents or your great Aunt Cindy who you haven't talked to in 10 years. Instead, I mean either the government or employers. A lot of times, if you have a job prior to going to college, your employer may offer some sort of tuition reimbursement if you're willing to get a degree in something that's useful for that employer. And so let's say you're working in a mechanical situation and you can get a free degree in mechanical engineering that your employer is going to pay for. Take advantage of that if that's something you want to do. Now, I don't think you should get a degree just for the sake of getting a degree and just because it's free. But if you're already working in that job and you really like what you're doing, by all means take advantage of the employer helping you to make college costs lower. Similarly, if you join a branch of the military, the government will pay for some or all of your college tuition. And in this case as well, don't join the military just for the sake of going to college for a lower cost, because there is a lot of sacrifice inherent in joining the military. However, if that's something that really appeals to you, there are multiple benefits of doing it, and a lower college cost is just one of those benefits. And the last tip for reducing your college costs is working for the school. Again, this one assumes that you're already working, but if you can get a job at the school or university you're looking to go to, a lot of times your tuition will be absolutely free. And in some cases, if your parents work at that university, your tuition will still be free. And so if you work at a university, if your parents work at a university, if you're thinking about starting work at a university, check to see what their tuition reimbursement policies are, because if they're going to waive all of your tuition, if you work there for, let's say, 20 or 30 hours a week, that might be an excellent choice for you financially. So hopefully from what I've just said, you've been able to see that there are some different options if college costs seem astronomical to you. Unfortunately, there's no easy way just to sign up for free college and just go right on your merry way. And all of these options that I did say require a lot of work and effort and time. However, if going to college is really important to you, and yet the costs are the one thing holding you back, I hope now you'll know that there are some other options for you to look into and consider. And if you guys have any more questions about tuition, about how to pay for college, please either send me an email, my email's in the description box below, or feel free to comment on this video and I'll answer as quickly as possible. If you guys learned anything at all from this video, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more tips and tricks about the college application process. Guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.